I read some of the past jungle stuff, and it seems like jungle items specifically got a lot of overhauls over the years. Do you think it'll stay as is, or will it make more jungle item overhauls? I mean, maybe. I think we moved to a spot where we don't want jungle items to be a specific thing in your item slot. We moved to, like, we want junglers to build items like everybody else. That said, jungle items also just felt cool. It was like, here's my special thing. And so when they felt like they were cool things you got that were special to you, like Cinderhulk as an example. I think Cinderhulk was one of the things that made tankier junglers feel really good, because they're like, oh man, if I'm a tanky Cinderhulk jungler, I get this % health multiplier that I can't find anywhere else in the game. Spirit of the Elder Lizard, oh man, I get this true damage burn. No one else gets that, right? So there's definitely some really cool jungle items that maybe made jungling feel better. But over the last few years, we've moved towards, we want junglers to build the same items as everybody else so that they can feel cool about the same items that, say, top laners can. Whether or not that's correct is more of an open question. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think there's a lot of really good reasons to do that. But, you know, looking at items like Cinderhulk and stuff, I do wonder, it's like, I wonder if explicit jungle items were cool for these characters or not. Yeah, the return of Blue Ezreal. Yeah, let's get Blue Ezreal back in the game. That guy was sick. Would it be healthier for the game if monster mods only applied if your champ has smite? There's extra monster damage, doesn't seep into other roles. So it's a question of, like, should other roles be able to interact with the jungle at all, right? So, like, as an example, if Echo didn't have the monster mod on his passive, he would just not be able to interact with the jungle monsters. In a way that's, like, not really true for, say, like, Cassiopeia or something. Or even Lux. Like, you know, is Lux good at clearing the jungle? No, not at all. But, you know, she has some spells that if she throws out at the jungle camp, like, she's gonna be able to take a blue buff, right? Echo, like, he just doesn't have much of a sustained damage pattern, and so, like, if his passive wasn't good against the jungle, like, mid lane Echo could never take a jungle camp. Never is hyperbolic, of course, but, like, that's what I'm getting at. And so, in a lot of cases, these jungle mods aren't just, oh, this character's a viable jungler, but also, oh, this character can interact with the jungle at all, and that's actually fine for lane. Like, I don't think that's wrong for laners to be able to interact with the jungle. Where it gets to be a problem is where the jungle mods we've had to give a character to make them viable in the jungle are so absolutely crazy that, like, they just get camps for free, right? And that's where you do want to start asking, like, oh, is this character make sense? That said, two things on that is, one is we found that, like, being able to kill jungle camps is not any real increase in power in terms of win rate in regards to champions and lanes. You might be like, what are you talking about, August? The mid laner can take raptors. True, but just in terms of win rate, which is not the only way to mitigate power, but in terms of win rate, whenever we do a jungle mod, the win rate impact on that character's laning pattern is close to 0. So it just turns out that most laners in most games interact with jungle so infrequently that, like, it doesn't really tend to, in most cases, impact their ability to play the game. That said, there's definitely some characters. I said the biggest risk to me actually is the top lane split pushers. Those ones I think can get a bit scary, where it's like, here's a question: should Garen have jungle mods? Right? We gave him jungle mods. It doesn't seem to have made him any better in the jungle, but Garen's pretty good at taking those golems when he's pushing top lane, and maybe he shouldn't be part of his power budget, right? Like, maybe he should not have the power budget of, I split push top lane and then run in the jungle and take all the camps. Like, and so I think there's, like, some analyses we can do on certain characters. All that said, I would not put a jungle mod that's only works with smite. That was the original question, is should jungle mods only be on smite? I personally wouldn't do that, because, like, I think it's important that you can, like, understand the damage your character will do to things by just playing the game, including if you don't have smite. If we did have a jungle mod that was only on smite, the way I would personally do it would be like, here's a silly version of it. It would have to be better tuned than this, but every character in League of Legends has a jungle number, and your jungle number, if you take smite, is a mod on how much damage you do to the jungle. And it's differently tuned for every character. Right? And then, like, it becomes this systemic thing where when you get a jungle item, all the jungle items basically say, I amp your damage against the jungle to some degree, and then there's, like, a slight tuning variable based on character. Anyways, I don't know if that would actually work, but that's, like, a thought. Yeah, like ARAM mods, right? It's like, hey, I do 10% increased damage to the jungle. I do 5% increased damage, something like that. Anyways, don't know if that's actually a good idea, but like if we're talking about like how would we adjust jungle mods on Smite, I think the way to do it would be more like a more global mod to the character, as opposed to like if you have Smite, your Q does bonus damage. I think that probably feels a lot worse and is a lot more like weird. Are there any plans to adjust AP champs items like Lichbane and Sylas? It seems like AP junglers are taking over the meta. I guess my question is like, is it bad that AP junglers are being played? We are going to be like nerfing some AP junglers. Like there's definitely some AP junglers that are OP, right? But like if you look at the jungle meta right now, it's like the AD junglers are still on top. We'll start with that. Like here's Nocturne, Kha'Zix, Viego, Lee Sin, Master Yi, a lot of Giga Chads up there. And so I don't think it's necessarily wrong that like characters like Lilia or Diana or Karthus can play the game. I think Karthus is a bit scary because he's actually just completely broken in high MMR, so we have to be careful about that. But like, I don't necessarily look at the jungle meta and be like, wow, AP junglers are taking over, we need to get rid of them. I'd be like, well, if there's specific AP junglers that are way too strong, let's nerf them. Like maybe Lilia is too strong, maybe Karthus is too strong. But I don't know if the game is better if we just go back to only AD characters being viable in that role. That seems like it would be kind of rough. Do the jungle changes over multiple seasons that are intended to bring more players into the role succeed or fail? I think some of them have succeeded and some of them have failed. I think a lot of the stuff we did to make jungle more playable was like very, very successful. But I think there's a number of things that also just make jungle hard that we haven't necessarily resolved. Like as an example, I think one of the things that's hard about jungle is actually our balance strategy towards it. We tend to nerf jungle because it is like one of the highest impact roles in the game, which just ends up making people want to play it less. And so on one hand, it's like, well, if a role is OP, perhaps we should nerf it. Like that makes sense, right? So I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong that we've done that. But on the flip side, it's like, well, of course jungle would be strong. It's jungle. Like the whole point of jungle is that you have access to all the lanes and run around and gank people, right? So if there was a role in League of Legends that I would expect to be strong, it probably would be jungle. So then there's this question of like, okay, well, how strong should jungle be compared to like what it is just on face value, right? Compared to like say top lane, whereas like top laners typically are one of the weaker roles in the game, but also that's kind of what they want in terms of what they, that's a result of giving them what they want. And what I mean by that is not that top laners want to be weak or that we should make top laners weak, but what top laners play top lane for is a 1v1 honor duel on an island, right? And if that's what you want, if you just want to go 1v1 someone, you're going to have less impact on the game because, you know, everybody else is doing things there. So it's kind of a thing where it's like top lane is kind of the opposite of jungle, where it's a very popular role that tends to be a little weak, but like if we buff top lane, there's a lot of ways we could buff top lane that top laners wouldn't enjoy because the reason they're playing top lane is to have a 1v1, which is just not as strong as like being able to go into all their lanes as a jungler, as an example. Yeah, and so like I think there's a complexity in jungle where it probably needs to be tuned to a degree where it's not going to be as fun for the average player for a variety of reasons, and so it's a question of like how exactly should we tune it. That said, I do think a number of the changes we've done over the years to it have been successful in terms of like removing power that is not wanted. So I've talked about it a few times, but yeah, and so there's this complexity with jungle where it's like, how do we tune it in a way that junglers enjoy? And like, it's like, as an example, one of the things we got rid of was double camping. And if you were a really high elo jungler, you might have liked that. You would have been like, oh, that was a skill expressive thing. I could like optimize my jungle clear by clearing out camps. And that was a way to be very powerful on a jungler, was double camping, because you'd clear faster, you'd get more money, all those things, right? But here's the problem with double camping. The majority of jungle players, it turns out, did not enjoy that and did not care about that. And so it was a thing where if you were really, really good at double camping, you could get a lot of power out of the jungle, but it was power that most jungle players didn't want. And so it's kind of a question of, and didn't care about. So it's kind of a question of making sure that the place that a role has power is aligned with like things like most players enjoy doing and are like interested in doing. So yeah.